Hey everybody, welcome to Before the Commit, episode 17. This week we'll be talking about data centers in space. Really interesting to hear what you got to say about that, Dustin. I've heard a little bit about, sun being a fusion reactor. Why not use it like unimpeded by atmospheric conditions? We'll also be talking about, is OpenAI the new Netscape? A little bit of a hot take, but yeah, that should be a nice talk. And in the Killam chain, we'll be talking about AI to AI or agentic exploitation. Also, our book is out. Before the Commit, the book. Hey, Dustin, how's it going? Oh, there you go.
Oh, I'm good. How are you? Thanks for unmuting me.
Yeah. So the book, it's out. It's real. Yeah, I got the proof in the mail yesterday, and yeah, it was just kind of surreal, like touching it, and I'll show it on the screen. I mean, it's actually like a book, like almost like a textbook. The blur feet, there you go. Like it's actually like real. Like it's yeah. Pretty cool.
I'm excited.
Cool,
I'm pretty excited about how it came out. After I read it cover to cover, I was thinking to myself, wow, this is kind of like a playbook for what to do if you're like a CISO or a engineering leader and you're trying to figure out how the hell do I position our company with this new AI stuff? Like I said, most companies are either putting their head in the sand and saying, we're not allowing AI, and then all their employees are using AI on their personal devices and leaking company data out that way. Or they're gung-ho into AI and security is kind of a second thought, which is understandable because there's not too many people talking about it. And there seems to be open questions about how you secure this stuff, but the book really goes into detail on a practical level about how you would go about securing these things. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it's just been my observation, like in the short time that I have been, kind of increasing awareness about the book, that many of the times when people talk about AI security, they think of it in terms of using AI for security. So using it for secure code reviews, not around the concept of like, there's this like, I think there's some people talking about it, but there's a general misconception that, if I do enough code reviews that I'm good, like I'll catch all the security bugs, but not understanding it, that you can't just assume that the outputs are that doing secure code reviews is going to catch everything. That that needs to be like all you do. Like you need a defense in depth approach, all the things that we talk about in the book, whether it's using LLM proxies or using guardrails, having human in the loop reviews still.
Having more structured context, with wrappers around pieces of content that are from sources you don't necessarily trust.
I don't see like a lot of, and I think that's really why I think I was wanting to write this book, is that to raise a level of awareness around like applying zero trust concepts to your model, like the never trust, always verify mindset to everything you do. Like assume your model has been compromised already, and then build around that concept. And I think generally speaking, it's my observation that people are not really talking about it.
And, it's an interesting time period because I don't think that someone like me would write a book. Normally I would gain all this knowledge in some sort of upcoming field, and I would talk to all those people around me about it. But I wouldn't have the time to really kind of promote it out there into a wide audience. maybe if I had a blog or something like that, but I'm also not really a prolific blogger. So,
Yeah.
But it's like today's world, when you can really kind of form your ideas using AI, structure them, etc. It really is like a great, and this goes back to what I was saying before about people who are out there that are young. Like, this is going to be an age where you can learn so many things so quickly. Like, there's so many resources out there. And it's not just like, oh, go read this book and hope you can have something rub off on you. But you can have like someone explain the book to you, an AI explain the book to you, and you can ask questions back and forth like you have a mentor. It's just, I do it all the time. It's just like I said, it's a little bit of hyperbole because obviously I've learned a lot in 25 years, but I feel like I've learned more in the last year or two than I have in 25 years.
Yeah. So I think I lost Dustin. Yeah. I mean, I was listening to a podcast earlier today about AI paywalls from the AI security podcast, and it was quite telling around the concepts around being able to um, block various different types of yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I was just saying, I listened to the AI security podcast, and they were talking about something that we talked about many episodes ago, which was around the paywall concept, meaning that they have their own browser now called Ladybird, and like they're competing openly with Chrome, and like this idea of like the open web is being a dead thing. Um, I think right now more than any time ever, it is super hard to market your ideas because there's so many out there. So like not only is it a time for like so many ideas to be out there, but there's so many people that can be entrepreneurs now that it's hard to kind of sift through the noise. It's kind of hard to see like what to do. So like my feeling is like we're entering an era of like it's not like you almost don't even need to buy products in some markets anymore, like because you can build whatever you would normally buy. The new currency, I think, in this world that we're entering into is just having the best people that know how to use the technology and being able to like do things faster than other people and more securely than other people. So
Yeah.
I honestly don't think the idea of like a SaaS-based company, like maybe platforms or things like that, don't really exist. It's really about your partnerships and like your ability to move really fast.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that, well, I still think that the moat that exists in the future is data. But I've also added things to that. I think that, and maybe these things don't stand the test of time, but at least in the current world, another moat is your application layer on top of the AI is becoming incredibly important. And that doesn't look like it traditionally does. It's not some website with CRUD. It's not just like, you can think of like 99.9% of websites as just a front end for some database. And with a lot of logic rules in front of it that make it, do some interesting things. But it's really just a visual interface for a database. And really that world is going to change drastically. And I think that it's never been easier than today to do things, but that just brings other challenges. Now it's not about, can I build this in enough time? It's now, am I building the right thing? Am I thinking far enough in the future about what's coming that I'm not just wiped away by what's next? And it's, what's funny is that when you look at the science behind it and the people who talk about things like singularity, they talk about this as things start to speed up on towards this, technological concept called singularity. You approach this point where it's increasingly more difficult to predict the future. And then you get to this point that's like mathematically impossible to predict what's next. And I think that you can kind of feel that things are speeding up. They're becoming harder to predict. I think you're going to see things in 2026 that are really going to nail the coffin on this debate about whether AI is here to stay.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm just excited about seeing all the things that are going to come out. And also I feel humbled by the fact of like trying to figure out how to innovate within this world where it seems like everyone's innovating at the same time at breakneck speeds.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I think that it's like we've been playing checkers and chess for the last 25 years, and now the whole game is different, and now everyone's got to figure it out again.
Is it like Stratego or Risk?
I think it's like,
or War Social.
I think it's like like those memes where they have the chess table that has multiple levels. It's like 4D chess or something.
Oh, it's real, actually. I think, yeah.
That is, I've seen it. I've seen people make those boards before.
Yeah, it's like D&D more like anything now. Yeah.
I got to get good at the regular board first before I go to multiple boards.
Yeah, chess is not my forte. I play a mean game of Chutes and Ladders if you want to go at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I wanted to pivot into the Merriam-Webster released the word of the year, which is slop.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of pretty cool to see that the word of the year was, as a direct result of like, I think 2025 will be known for a lot of things, but it'll be known as the year of massive AI innovation. I saw somebody say that there will be like one more model release before the end of the year, like amazing model release. Mm-hmm. We don't know who it is. Maybe it's Grok, maybe it's Anthropic will release, Opus 5 or something like that. But we'll have something, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, this concept around the world slop is like a sort of, and I think that's part of the issue is that there's so much content being created, more content being created now than anything. Mm-hmm. And, essentially the word is just, somebody just taking a bunch of text from the response of an LLM and just copying and pasting it somewhere else. Yeah. So the word of the year, slop, is digital content of low quality that is produced usually in quantity by means of artificial intelligence. All that stuff is dumped on our screen, captured in just 4 letters. The English language came through again. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's part of the challenge is that, there's so much noise. And how do you hear the signal through the noise when there's so much, like even just scrolling through social media like X or LinkedIn, a lot of the content is not, it's just not well thought out. It's not in your voice, in someone's voice. It's generic. Yeah. And in some respects, the internet's getting dumbed down, not smarter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everyone's starting to sound the same on social media, everyone's got their AI response, and it's not just them. I mean, I've responded using AI. And I think that there's a learning curve to it, which I'm not completely an expert at, but there are things that allow you to generate better responses. Over time, you can get it to truly understand, sort of your style and your tone and what types of things you would talk about on a general basis. And you can really dial it into where you're producing higher quality content. But I think another way to look at it is that, yeah, there's a lot of slop. And I think that we're going to continue to live in the slop world for some time. But it's all a result of all these new tools entering the marketplace. The United States is a very entrepreneur heavy marketplace. So you got everyone trying out these things and trying to learn them at once. And the result is you're going to see a lot of slop from the tests and the test runs as people get better and better and better at it. Now, I'm sure there will be people producing slop forever, but I think the quality will go up over time.
Yeah, I hope so, but also I'm worried about the training data that's being created. So slop being trained, then gets used to train models, so like the hope is that the AI is getting better, not dumber. But yeah, I mean, the AI companies will have to figure that out in terms of what they're using as their training material.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. Like, what happens when the world is actually 95% AI generated as opposed to 95% human generated? And then your training set is kind of cyclical. It's like you're training on your own stuff.
Yep.
So it's going to be interesting. I think in the future, it might actually be a business to try to get real data from humans and siphon through, you know what I mean? Like you might actually get paid for your opinions in the future, because it'll be easier to just pay for it than try to weed it out of the 95% of the internet that isn't. But yeah, it's.
Yeah. In other news, the U.S. government unveiled a new initiative yesterday called the U.S. Tech Force. 1,000 engineers who work on artificial intelligence infrastructure and other technologies, and working directly with private sector partners. Like AWS, Apple, Palantir, OpenAI, Microsoft, NVIDIA.
I think it's huge. I think that like this idea that like there's like a new need for. This is not like a new version of AngularJS came out, and all the engineers who are using the old version are gonna, instantly pick up the new version and start using it. There's a learning curve, and once that learning curve is more and more understood, there's going to be a training curve where there's training to make this happen. But it's not like you can just hand AI tools to your workforce and say go. They're not structured enough yet. They're not like you're buying the dialed in tool that's for a specific use case. You're mostly using tools that are very general, and then you're inventing new ways to accomplish goals with them. Things like Claude Code end up being like a Swiss Army knife where you can use it on code, but you can also use it on pretty much anything you can think of, including, building other types of materials, or planning out tasks and things like that. So I think that there's this need for folks that are trained in that way to go in and take a look at infrastructure, take a look at companies and really and organizations, and really kind of say, hey, these are the things that we can really bring into the future, and these are the points that we can automate and things like that. I was listening recently to just a random clip from like Mark Cuban, and they were asking him about this, and he was talking about when he was young, he got his start just fixing people's computers, right? Just going around and like being that guy who was local and could fix people's computers and go around and do this and that. And he grew from there when he was younger. And he was saying that, and I agree with him on this. I don't always agree with him, but I agree with him on this, is that same pattern is happening again. Like if you're young right now and you get good at AI, there's going to be this whole market of these small businesses that are looking for someone who's just going to come to tell them how to use AI, and how to integrate it with their business, be the integrator between, like you don't have to necessarily create the next AI product. There's going to be a whole host of people that are going to need to know how to integrate the products that exist that come out. So there's a lot of solutions level openings, I think, in terms of opportunities for entrepreneurs to jump in a local market.
Yeah, I think that the way that I read it was, this kind of like battle, this arms race, the great competition, power competition with China. And, how do you sort of contend with a authoritarian government that can take its best people and put them on the highest priority AI efforts, like secret projects, whatever have you, you need something like that to contend with it. I think this US workforce or whatever tech force is just the beginning of what you can do. I think the way that I envisioned it is that you want everybody, all of us, to be kind of leveraging AI in a secure manner, like to kind of amplify our efforts. But yeah, I see it as a good first step. I think much more is needed, especially around training those that like need to learn it, like whether they be like people in the military or civilians, so that they understand how to use it securely. It's not enough to just take people who are already in industry and put together a force. Like I think training and like mobilizing other useful people and amplifying your efforts is critical. 1,000 people is nothing. You know, China is a country of 1.3, 1.4 billion people that you can, what percentage of those people can you enlist and force them into labor to do your bidding, you know? So.
Yeah. I mean, my personal belief on this whole thing, and by the way, I think that the tech force and, you know, the way that the DoD is really going gung ho, you know, they had a poster up on the Pentagon saying, I want you to use AI with the, you know, the,
Yep.
like the Uncle
Pete
Sam
Hegseth.
photo.
Yep.
I think that's all great. However, I do believe that China will catch up, and they may even surpass us, you know, in some sort of facets of the AI cake. I mean, they've already surpassed us in energy, for example. But I think, kind of going back to what I was saying before about how things become less and less predictable. Like if I were choosing two different operating systems, I would choose the operating system that has market forces where people are making their own decisions based on profit motive and therefore can pivot very quickly in a quickly changing environment, than one that's centrally planned from the down up, or from the up down, I should say. Because as things are predictable, like we need more energy, they're going to beat us to that because they can just say, okay, everyone tomorrow go make more energy. The United States can't really do that. They have to use incentives and things like that. And they have to get the market forces to move in that direction.
Yep.
But once you enter into the, like, so China will probably build a new city for each layer of the 7-layer cake. But what happens when the 7-layer cake is different in the future because it starts becoming unpredictable? Are you going to knock down cities and build new ones? It's going to become very difficult to plan this from the top. So, you know, if I were to predict, I would say that while things are predictable, they catch up and or pass us in certain facets. And then as things start to speed up and start to become more and more unpredictable, I think that the market-based system has more flexibility and is able, it's kind of like it's startup versus big company at that point.
Yeah, I think my general like comment there is like, you're not going to do away with the military. You're not going to do away with government workers. And there are people there that can benefit greatly from being armed with the tools of how to use artificial intelligence. And so my point is that I don't think it's enough to just band together 1,000 people that already have jobs and are already good at using AI to accomplish a bunch of really high priority tasks. I think that you need to just live in the reality of what we are and realize that if we're going to, I wouldn't say mostly on the AI stuff. I think I look at AI two ways. Like, I think we at some point reach like a point where like the AI is as good as it's going to get. Like, it's not going to get any better. It's just going to reach a point of like, this is like, it's sort of like microprocessors. Like, you're just stacking more microprocessors on top of each other. Like, it might get slightly incrementally better, but where the other side of it goes is like the implementation of it. or different types of AI that do different types of things, not just what we mostly talk about here, which is large language models.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, large language models are a very small part. And I do think that there's probably a plateau to large language models. They're only a language model.
Yeah.
You know, they're only a language model. And the idea that they can reason at all was kind of a surprise to everyone involved in that field. I mean, sorry, there's probably some geniuses that could foresee it, but from the perspective of the general public, or at least the people in that industry, it was surprising. That's why they call it sort of emerging qualities. But yeah, I do think there will be some sort of like, I mean, LLMs are because they're language based, they're sometimes uncertain about things, or they make sneaky language type mistakes. Whereas like something that's rooted in something more physics is not going to make those types of wishy-washy mistakes. So when you ask an LLM about physics, it'll often get it right, but sometimes it'll get it wrong. Whereas like a physics-based AI would probably never get it wrong, because it would just be so rooted in physics, it would not be equivocating about some language-based way it was asked. But who knows? I mean, I can tell you that if an LLM was driving my Tesla, I wouldn't drive it. But if there's a real world AI driving the Tesla, like there is, one that's video based, I'm absolutely thrilled with having it drive. But those are two completely different types of AI for two different purposes. One is built for driving a car, and one is built for, essentially being able to speak in a natural language, or being able to understand natural language. Maybe this pivots a little bit into the data centers in space.
You read my mind. So yeah, there's a startup. Well, I don't know if there's a startup. They got a shit ton of money. I guess you're a startup until you say you're not. A company based out of Redmond, Washington, has received a bunch of money from Y Combinator, Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia, In-Q-Tel, and they're called Star Cloud. And what they're doing is building a data center in space. And for all the reasons that we've talked about, no atmospheric, little or no atmospheric conditions affecting solar generation, things related to, the way that the cooling required, because you have natural cooling as a result of the temperatures of space.
Yeah, this really didn't key in with me until I had seen, I think it was like Gavin Baker on a podcast talking about it. And he really kind of spelled it out very well, which is when you reduce it down to the physics of what's going on in data centers for AI, there really is no better location for a data center than space. Because when people ask me, why was it such a big deal when NVIDIA and Elon Musk grouped together and put up that data center overnight with 100,000 GPUs clustered and coherent? I mean, the fact that it happened very quickly was a big feat in itself, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when you have 100,000 GPUs in these data centers and they're coherent with each other, what that means is, and you have to see the cabling that they have to put up. The cabling is just, it's like probably one of the biggest
challenges. They have
routers,
like special routers that they use to have the GPUs talk to each other.
So what that means is you have 100,000 GPUs, and you got to figure the cooling and just the fact of like, how do you position 100,000 GPUs so that they can all be wired to each other? And then that's the easy part. The hard part is that when you're wiring them to each other, they have to be wired in such a way that all 100,000 GPUs have a wire to all 100,000 100,000 other GPUs. So they can all talk to each other peer to peer, any of the other 100,000 direct line. And they do that at real time. And there can't be any latency that stops that from taking place. So it's like a big distributed brain.
Yeah, I heard that the speed of a single one of those routers has more bandwidth than the entire internet does in like a second or something like that.
Yeah.
Like something insane like that. Yeah.
Like the throughput of what travels through the wires is more than the entire internet in like a minute.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy.
It's crazy.
So I don't know enough about this topic. So like, how are they intending on like getting the power back to Earth? Like, are they beaming it? Like, how do they, once you harvest the power, like what do you do from there? Or is it like satellite connections? Like, are you just reserving all the power there? Do you have battery storage? Like, what's sort of like everything runs there? Is there like an edge server? Like, what does this look like?
So what's interesting is in a data center, you need power, you need cooling, and you need these wires that are capable, I'm saying wires, but they're cabling.
Connections.
Very advanced cabling that allows these high throughput peer-to-peer across all the clusters, et cetera. Now, when you're in space, you can do, so the problem with solar on the ground is you need batteries because it's not sunny all the time. You eventually go, to the dark side of the earth, away from the sun or whatever, at nighttime. So, but in space, you have sunlight 100% of the time. So you don't even need batteries. You could just have solar arrays in space. This is how, by the way, this is how all the satellites work. And because you're in outer space without going through the atmosphere, you get like 30 or 40% more energy from a solar panel than you would on Earth because you just have that much more radiation. Didn't go through the Earth's atmosphere. Elon Musk said, like, why not use the sun? It's this huge fusion reactor. Why build a fusion reactor on Earth that's going to give you 1/millionth of the, I think one thing that he's good at is really kind of putting things in context. He's like, you could burn all of Jupiter 10 times and you still wouldn't, the Earth would still round up to 100% of the energy in the universe. So it's just like the star in the middle of the universe is the biggest source of energy, so large that every other piece of energy in this, star system pales in comparison. It's just a rounding error. And all the energy is coming from the sun. So you have the solar panels in space, 100% of the time getting energy because you rotate it to always be facing the sun. And then the other side of the satellite that isn't being hit by the sun because it's on the other side of the solar panels has absolute 0 Kelvin as its temperature. So you literally just have the heat sink come out the wall and it just instantly puts all the heat out into the vacuum. And then the coherent wire part is it may seem strange because these wires in the data center are all within some room. In outer space, the satellites are many, many miles away from each other, but still a laser in a vacuum is far faster than any cabling that could ever be made on Earth. Because it travels at the speed of light. So if you just networked all the satellites with lasers, which is really simple to do. I mean, we do it all the time. All the satellites surrounding Earth, if they had GPUs on them, would be a networked data center that was actually faster and more coherent than anything you could produce on Earth, unless somehow you put it in a vacuum. But then you'd still have the cooling and still have the energy issues. So it's just actually a pretty stunning place to put data centers. So now you hear about things like SpaceX is rumors, or they're going to go IPO in order to boost up funding and compete in this market. And then the company you just mentioned is also ramping up to compete in this market. So it's an interesting market.
Yep. Yeah. So I actually ran through and saw like what are some of the challenges beyond the ones that you mentioned. One of it is the launch cost. So like a single launch could cost tens of millions of dollars, which explains why you would IPO, because you need a shit ton of capital. To make space data, launch costs would need to drop dramatically, potentially below $200 per kilogram by the mid 2030s, saying we're decades away from increased launch frequency for large scale deployments. The other one is radiation and hardware durability during solar storms. The equipment, one single processor could cost $200K versus $300 for a terrestrial one, meaning because you need to build resilience into the processors. Some talk about Google's TPUs, but the lab tests haven't been run in space or years of orbit. Sorry. You mentioned the thermal cooling. Apparently 50%, 40% of the satellite's power is required to actually dissipate the heat. So yeah, you're using 40% of the power you get from the sun to dump the power, like the sort of processing, what did you call the byproduct of doing all that processing.
Yeah.
And then it talks about like orbital debris, collisions, maintenance and servicing. So like you need to have a way to get people up to work in the data center, which reminds me of that episode of Silicon Valley with that guy that's like, you ever see that episode where the guy's just walking through the data center and he gets lost and like, yeah, he like never sees the light of day. His name's
I'm just
John.
excited that finally, when I put things in the cloud, they will be in the cloud.
Well, technically, no, they're not in the cloud. They're in the space.
Whatever, it's close
we
enough.
Need it. We needed a new term. Yeah, instead of the cloud, they're in space.
But one thing that's interesting is when they asked the folks at Starlink whether they would ever have faster, lower latency speeds on Starlink than they would from, would you ever compete in the cities? What I think was the question. And Starlink was basically like, no, we're not going to compete in the cities because the latency of going to a satellite for your internet is obviously going to be higher than a direct wire going to a substation, a handful of blocks away in a city. However, that all flips on its head when you talk about data centers in the sky, because think about it. When you use an LLM, you're going all the way through the internet to the LLM. The LLM's then making all the way back. You're going through how many different jumps?
Well, I have.
Whereas if the satellite was the data center, you would be hitting the inference server directly, and the inference server would be coming back to you directly. So the latency on AI would actually be much, much faster than the latency today, which is an interesting point I also heard.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you pivoted to that point, because where I was going next was, what is 7G? And 7G is exactly what you said, proposed standard for laser-based systems. If the future of internet is not browser-based, like I've been listening to this AI security podcast, search engines are dead. Like, that's it. They're gone. They're over. The future of the web is generative AI, is a generative web. What that is, don't know. I have some of my own ideas. We've talked about it offline, but it's a world where, do you even go to a web page? Do you even or do you just get presented? Like, is there a web browser? Like, we've talked about using speech to text, robots, hand-free devices, glasses, like, we should do an episode on the the meta glasses and augmented reality and where the future of that lies. Like, do you even have phones anymore? Like, do laptops exist? What is the need for them? So if everything is coming through AI, through a generative web, then my answer to you is that maybe it's not called Starlink. Maybe it is, but I imagine it very soon, within the next 10 years, that everything is some kind of, laser based or satellite based connection, and cell phone towers disappear, and, they become a thing of the past.
Yeah, I could see that. The only problem with lasers is they don't shoot through walls very well. So
Yeah,
you'd have to
well,
have like
you have to have local routers that, edge based systems.
yeah, you
There'll be
just put a
some concept to like aggregate out, but I would
yeah,
imagine that it's a much different, like right now cell towers are using what, like high UHF or HF frequency to travel long distances, and they're
yeah,
communicating with each other, but there's cabling underground. I would
yeah.
imagine that all that stuff disappears and everything is in space, and maybe there's some
Yeah,
stuff locally like edge servers. But yeah.
yeah, I could see that. There's something else that you had mentioned that had made me think of something, and then I forgot about it. But the no, I'll have to come back to it when I remember it later, if
Yeah.
at all.
The last one was regulatory stuff. Apparently there's and again, it depends where you live. Like in the US, we have the FCC, and there's like deorbit rules, like how long, but that stuff could be changed very easily. And, could it be sooner than 10 years? Do you think we'll have a data center in space in less than 10 years by 2035?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think so. I think in half that maybe, because I think that you already have satellites that are going up, like Starlink satellites that are up there. It's an open question. I wonder like how much this caught SpaceX by surprise or how much they were planning this all along. I have no idea. But assuming that they had some sort of plan going into this and understood that this was possible, maybe the Starlink satellites are already part of the way there. Maybe they're going to be there. I don't know. It's a good question. I don't think it'll take 10 years though. I feel like the technology is here. It's not like I don't think you would have to invent anything new in order to make that happen. I think it's just about execution.
Just challenges and money,
Yeah.
and possibly materials that need to be created, like around things like resisting like solar winds that could, destroy equipment,
Yeah.
more effective ways to do maintenance. Like, do you have robots doing maintenance? Like, are there people up there doing maintenance? So I think there are things to consider there, and you can't just have one of them. Like, you need at least two, maybe
Yeah.
three, because you
Probably a
need
whole lot more.
redundancy built in. But I'm just saying, to start out with, you need at least two.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they're going to be like these huge. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I misread it, but I didn't get the sense that they're like this huge. Maybe they are actually, like maybe they have to be a big data center because you can't wrap the whole globe in satellites and then all of them be coherent because some of them would be on opposite sides of the globe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The actual
There's smarter
picture
people figuring this out, I'm sure.
the actual picture, yeah, let me see if I can.
I remember what I was going to say about generative web too, so we can come back to that.
Yeah. Yeah, so you see that?
Oh yeah.
So I don't know.
It looks like they're all plotting to Death Star the Earth.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird picture because it shows them going through the Earth.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. Are we shooting lasers through the Earth now? So
yeah. So when you said generative web before, and you were talking about whether or not search engines and other things exist, kind of like what I was saying before, where every website is just a CRUD interface for a database. It's just create, read, update, delete on some database, and then some sort of bespoke interface for it. And then you have some websites you like to use and some websites you don't like to use. And it all comes down to like what their interface is on top of the database. It's not like you hate the database. It's not like, oh, I hate this data. You know, it's because you don't like that they have set up their search this way, or they don't let you search this way, or you wish there was, you wish they would have the data displayed this way versus that way. So I feel like your user interface is very much personal.
Yes.
And like, why wouldn't you want your user interface everywhere? And really, you just have different user interfaces for different types of data. And you like your user interface that way. So why wouldn't I go to every website that had flight data and use my own user interface for how to search for flights, as opposed to using Expedia's user interface for searching for flights? And therefore, I don't have to learn a new one each time. I don't have to suffer through the ones that suck. And you know, their branding can just be something layered onto my user interface. So my user interface is almost like a color changing user interface that has branding added additions to it. And why wouldn't you want that over having to rely on the source being both good at gathering data and also good at showing to you in the way that you want to see it?
Yeah.
You know,
I do think
usually the people that are good at building a scaled business around, you know, flight data also aren't great at SQL. That's why they have to hire a whole bunch of people. And sometimes you get a mismatch of different skill sets that don't produce something that stands up to what what you would like.
Yeah, I think there's like another layer here that isn't been created yet, because if you are a company, like the idea of like web URLs and like DNS become less important. And it's really about data, like to your point earlier. So it's like, how do I access that data? And along with that data are like, you know, semantic information about what is available, right? So like a discovery endpoint, which contains things like brand assets. And then as you are kind of rendering like data, like how you want it displayed, like even things like a single web page paints up when you go to a website, and that's where you are. You were there. Like the concept of like a single pane of glass, or like the concept of tabbing kind of goes away, or like kind of fades into the background. And you're kind of like more in a, what I'm envisioning is like a mind map where you kind of move throughout the internet in like a visual sense. And you have widgets and like, you remember like SharePoint parts? Like I hate to use SharePoint as an example, but like the concept of like a Bloomberg terminal where you're accessing bits of information on the screen. And over time, it learns your preferences. It learns what you access regularly. And yeah, like I'm shopping on Instacart, or I am, you know, accessing my banking information. And then the other side of it too is like, it becomes less about sitting at a computer and a laptop and operating, and more about like, well, what's the mechanism I'm using? Like to me, like being in the shower and like having a great idea and then coding it while I'm in the shower, like that's something that's going to be here very soon. Like
you're gonna use a lot of water.
What? Why am I going to use a lot of water?
Because you're going to be thinking about all the things you're building in the shower.
hey, so and so, can you update the website to like update our, you know, application that does blah 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 to do XYZ? It wouldn't be a website. It would be our, you know, our whatever product widget that we have out there that's underpinning something else. Or like, you know, order groceries for me. Like check out my usual grocery order and add all the items. mean, some of this stuff you could do now, but yeah, just thinking
I heard
toward
Walmart
like,
is adding AI purchasing. I just heard
yep,
that today.
yep,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah. We covered this a while ago. Some of the web browsers, or it was PayPal or something.
yeah,
They,
yeah. PayPal. They're
but yeah,
also
the general idea is that I think there's a new web, a new
mhm.
generative web, and there's another layer on top of it. The idea of writing HTML and JavaScript to build your web interface, that to me is, we're in the last era of web frameworks, like, this big shell attack, like Next.js era. Like, the idea
Mhm.
behind these types of attacks become less and less meaningful because the whole attack vector goes away, and instead you are really browsing the internet with a different type of, I don't even call it a browser, a different type of mechanism for kind of getting the information you need, taking actions on that information, and whatever have you next.
I think if you're a company who owns their own data and owns their own user interface to that data, you're going to increasingly find clients that aren't interested in the user interface at all. They just want ways of getting at the data in an AI way. And I think that if you're a company who doesn't own any of their own data, and what you do is you create a well-liked user interface for displaying all these disparate pieces of data, I feel like you're in a lot of peril right now, because the UI aspect of applications is going to become less valuable over time. And really, it's going to be about your data sources and what kind of value you're adding on top of that data. So if your application is really just a great viewport for other people's data, then you're going to have a lot of competition coming your way, because people are going to be able to fast follow generating this user interface, and there's really not that much moat. The moat used to be that it would take a long time for someone to build that, and then once they built it, they would have to convince your customers to change to them. But now the first part is not hard at all. Now they can following someone else is very easy, because you just point the AI at what you want to copy, and it will copy it essentially.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that kind of leads us into the next sort of, maybe not attack, which is the AI to AI exploitation. Mm-hmm. So the idea behind the attack is that, like, as you build these, I feel like the more we talk about these attacks, like, they're just kind of the same. Mm-hmm. You're coercing a model to do something. Yeah, but basically, as you have more an agentic layout in your sort of infrastructure, you essentially have the agent talk to another agent, because there's an implicit trust between different AI systems. You can manipulate the AI through prompt injection, essentially social engineering for AI, and cascade initiating failure through a series of connected loops that rapidly corrupts data, creates multiple false decisions.
Yeah, I think the main key indicator, or the main key difference between this one and others, is that it's like it's like a bank shot off of another AI, as opposed to being like, we've talked about how you can lay passive things on the internet, but increasingly more and more you're going to have, and I think this is the way the future is going to go, is you're going to have AI talking to AI, right? In the future, when you want to buy something, or you want to take some sort of action, your agent is going to take that action on your behalf. It's probably going to do research. It's going to go find the right product. It's going to go say, oh, based on preferences, I think this product is probably more up, my client, or whatever. I don't know what the AI agent is going to call you, but what the preferences are, and it's going to be making decisions. It might even be negotiating with another AI over price. You could imagine if you buy concert tickets in the future, like your AI is probably going to be able to negotiate or find the right seat, or, who knows, any other type of preference you can think of. So you're going to have AI talking to AI. There's going to be an AI on behalf of the seller, and there's going to be an AI on behalf of the buyer. And it's going to be like a real estate deal with a buyer's agent and a seller's agent. Now, not to say it's going to be super complicated like a real estate deal, but I think you're going to get much more nuanced transactions in the future where much more personal, catering to personal aspects of the transaction that weren't possible before because they weren't scalable, but now are suddenly scalable. Now you're able to make just like in the absurd future, right? Where you're going to a hotel room, all the hotel workers are robots. Your AI agent negotiated with the hotel's AI agent in order to find the right price, right? And what's it to the hotel to make sure that your room is set up the way you want it to, and you have little,
but it coerced
all the green M&Ms are taken out because I hate them, right? Like, what is it to them to do that?
Well, I would just say I would try to coerce it into getting the presidential suite.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it goes back to things covered in the book about, defense in depth, not implicitly trusting your models. I mean, I feel like a broken record. By the way, if you've just joined, if you want to buy the book, it's at beforethecommit.com. Click the link in the header. It's available on Kindle and paperback as of today, coming soon in audiobook. Before we close out, I wanted to talk about the new Netscape. So if anybody's familiar with Michael Burry, has ever seen the movie The Big Short, he was one of the people that, he's credited with being the person who predicted the mortgage crisis through the sort of collapse of, the whole way that mortgage bonds were set up, and he shorted the whole thing, and other people got in early, made a killing. And recently he's been on a couple of different circuits talking about the AI bubble. His latest prediction was that, OpenAI is kind of like Netscape Navigator. For those out there that don't know what Netscape Navigator is, it's a very old-fashioned statement, but it was sort of like, not the first web browser. I'm sure there were other ones, but kind of the first one in the world of dial-up internet and, HTML 1.1 initial takes, kind of passes at JavaScript, kind of came out of Netscape. So yeah, I know you have thoughts about this. So,
when I heard him make his first announcement, and it was right around, I remember he made an announcement that like Palantir and, AI was going to go down, and it right about coincided with, a drop in the market in a pretty significant way, a correction of about 10% or so. And then, he had talked about how he had a short or something like that. And I'm sure he probably made money because it had dropped right after it or something. I was interested because I also thought that AI is in need of a correction. I think any healthy growth market doesn't go straight up. Otherwise you start to get worried because that's not normal. They say when things go up very fast, they also come down incredibly fast. So you want to have this kind of like wavy upward trend. It's, you have to have a healthy growth so that there's not too much of a drop. So I expected things to probably sell off. I think that things did look a little bit bubblish. But now he's kind of gone like apocalyptic with it, where he's starting to like try to predict like the downfall of whole companies. And then the part where I got off the train and I was kind of like, okay, this is not something I can really get behind anymore, was he started talking about how Google and others, I believe he had mentioned, were like cooking the books. He was saying that they are messing with the depreciation of their GPUs in order to cook the
I've
books,
read this before. Yeah.
Right.
Well, they basically changed the mathematical formula from like 3 to 5 years, and
they keep on increasing the number of years that their GPUs last, which allows them to depreciate for longer, etc. Right. But anybody who's been watching this over time from the industry perspective immediately came out and said, no, in fact, they're being conservative. It's not 3 to 5 years. They're having GPUs be at 8 years, etc. So if anything, Google and them are being somewhat conservative, raising it from 3 to 5, because they could have probably raised it to 6, 7, or 8, right? Forget about the numbers, but the detail here is that the industry insiders are saying, no, it's the opposite. The GPUs actually last longer than what we're depreciating for on average, and are increasing over time.
I mean, don't you feel like you might be just like how other people were when he was saying crazy things during the mortgage crisis, and like he turned out to be right, like way ahead of his skis? It took many years. People were calling him Chicken Little, the sky is falling. And in reality, like, he was right, and it took a long time.
I mean, to be fair, mm-hmm. I never heard of him. I only heard of him after the book and the movie and everything like that. So also, I don't really have this whole history of watching him make these predictions.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't mean you. I mean, like, aren't you like other people?
Well, I'm very involved in the investment community. So it's not to say that like I don't pay attention to that. In fact, I worked in fintech during that period of time, was very heavily involved in working in and out of the banks. And I got caught by the downturn in mortgage.
I'm not saying that he was famous beforehand. I'm saying as a result of all of that, he became known. I bet most people never heard of him before. So,
well, it was a really good bet he made back with the mortgage-backed securities. But since then, he's kind of got this whole short thing where he tries to find the new short every couple of years, and his track record is not perfect. I should say, and I'm being generous. So you hear about his successes, but it's not like he's writing books about all the times he was wrong. But the part that I'm really keyed in on, and maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh on him, but the part I'm really keyed in on was he was just completely wrong about the depreciation idea. And just to claim that someone like Google would cook the books for like what's a rounding, like it's not really that big of a deal, even if, like, why would you cook all the books and commit a crime? I really doubt that anyone at Google is committing a crime. They don't have to. They have plenty of cash. They have, it just seems like such a silly statement to make. And then when you read the actual industry and folks are seeing the GPUs last longer and longer and longer. And then he had some other statements he made about, well, yeah, they're lasting longer, but they're not being utilized. He started to get to like, well, they're being utilized on less valuable token generation versus the full token. And it was just someone had to kind of tap him on the shoulder and be like, you're way out of your element here. You know what I mean? Like, do you really think that you know more about this than the folks that are building it, who are universally disagreeing with you with data? So with that being said, I do think that OpenAI could be the new Netscape, but I think that that's just the latest thing he's saying to try to capture headlines, So I don't know, but that's my negative take.
His assertion, the kind of the fundamentals behind his assertion is really around Microsoft is keeping it afloat, and at the same time, it's keeping it off its balance sheet. separately, like we've talked last episode about, Microsoft has started to, you can now use Anthropic models as part of Copilot. So OpenAI's models like ChatGPT are not the sole models available on Copilot. We read stuff about the Code Red Alert, Sam Altman, and then the course reversal. There's other things around them kind of showcasing these relationships they have at the enterprise level. I forget which one we talked about offline. But yeah, that essentially there's a whole bunch of funding that's flowing into OpenAI, and they're not profitable. They're hemorrhaging cash, and they're having code red alerts. And apparently there's some fundamentals to back it up. I would say where Michael Burry kind of, his claim to fame is that he actually looked at the fundamentals behind the mortgage-backed securities and found out that many of the people were delinquent on their loans, and also they didn't have the credit to actually necessitate the need to issue a loan to begin with, and that the loans were over the accreditation firms that kind of rate the loans were overrating them, if you will. And so it kind of became a house of cards.
Yeah, the banks were under a lot of pressure to sell subprime loans, and they don't have a way of securitizing them because nobody wants to take them off the balance sheet and buy them from the banks after they acquire them. So what they did was they started building packages. It's kind of like, it's kind of like a goodie bag where you can put the candy that nobody wants in there with the candy CDOs. That they do want.
Collateral debt obligations or synthetic collateral debt obligations. CDOs and CDOs.
But then it was also like graded where like, if you were like senior or paid more, you could get the top tranche of the goodie bag. So it's like, you're guaranteed the Snickers. You're not going to get candy corn no matter what. And then other people would pay less and they would be like, I'll take a chance on getting candy corn, but I'm mostly going to get Snickers because this thing looks great. And then they all got candy corn.
Apologies in advance to any of our listeners that love candy corn over Snickers.
Oh, unfollow.
I think it's a good place for us to acquiesce and move forward toward the next episode. Maybe we'll talk about other interfaces. Dive into AI or AR glasses or whatever it is now. I think the idea of VR goggles is kind of like going the way of the dodo. So thanks everybody for joining. Remember, pick up the book before the commit. I'm sure we'll cover it at some point. See you soon.